So of course, we're going to do our complexity chart then. Because really, everyone looked at this and were like also, oh, you think X game is more complex than Y game? And it's like, no, it's not about that. If you want that, we need this. So let's do a bit of this. Let's do a bit of this, my friends. Man, y'all are like reading my brain and I love it, okay? So it's Niche Fighter Monday. So we're going to focus on the niche fighters right now. We're going to start with that. We're going to focus in on these niche fighters and see what's up, right? And I see y'all there chatting. Everyone's like, we're talking about motion inputs. It's not necessarily, this is why I like the term lenient inputs for fighting games, right? Where your lenient input can be, oh, I'm using ABC instead of a 6-button light through heavy punch and kick. Oh, you can be limited button real estate can be your leniency. You can have large buffer window be your leniency for inputs. You could have, only quarter circles or only down motions, right? Like you can have all these things to reduce the complexity of your inputs. And so you have that where you have like the physical requirements and how complex do these things get, right? Like you can have a 2-button fighter, but if you need to do Marvel level extended combos and timing and stuff like that, maybe that's a little bit difficult. You have a bunch of one frame links, but you only have one button. Like that's a lenient input, but that's difficult input complexity. So we have our one axis, which is low input complexity to high input complexity. Yeah, APM is one aspect of it, 100%. Right? A slower pace might make things more lenient, but you can have high pace with like a high pace low button real estate, or a slow pace high button real estate might be equal in complexity, right? But those are the kind of considerations you need to take in. And this is another thing, as Toby says, I think there are people who have argued that it is the actual motion inputs that are what keeping people away. Facts not in evidence for that one, right? I don't necessarily think it's the motion inputs at a large scale that are keeping people away. Which is why it's missing the forest for the trees a bit to say the issue with inputs is the fact that I have to do a DP motion. It's less about that. There are all these other aspects related to it. And then the other important thing with what makes a game complex or simple or whatever the case may be, easy or hard, dumb or smart, whatever the fucking metric is or the term is that you want to use to determine how complex a game gets. It's about mental bandwidth, right? This is y'all have probably heard the term mental stack, right? Like, oh, my mental stack was overloaded, so I didn't see the jump in, or I didn't see the low coming. It's the idea that your brain is able to process only a certain number of things. So like, I can anti-air everything easily if all I'm doing is paying attention to anti-airs, but in a match, I have to pay attention to anti-airs and throws and positioning and projectiles and high-low and right-left and teleports and right and all these things. And so your mental stack is how well you're able to order and prioritize those things to be able to come out on top. Now, I think that's a bit of I'm not a huge fan of that term, but I understand why it's used. Mental bandwidth, I think, is the better term for this. How much bandwidth do I have? People know what bandwidth means with their internet, right? Like, how much bandwidth do I have? And that's really what it is, where it's like, when you're starting, you have very little mental bandwidth. So I go into Street Fighter for the first time, and I'm like, how do I do the Hadouken? I do it's down, and then I gotta go down, and then down right, and then right, and then I have to hit one of the punches. Now, which one's the punch again? Where are my punches? I gotta look down at the controller. You have super low mental bandwidth. So you're not able to process all the things you need. That's one of the things that is really like, that what makes fighting games hard. Once you know, oh, that's where all my buttons are, I have the mental memory, and I'm like, cool. The amount of bandwidth required to process that task gets reduced. So suddenly you're like, oh, I know where I am on stage. I know how to do all my moves. I know what my buttons are and where my buttons are. Now I can start thinking, oh, I can use that crouching medium kick to poke. Instead of saying, where is my crouching medium kick? You're saying, I'm going to use the crouching medium kick. You may or may not succeed because you shouldn't have been using the crouching medium kick. In fact, you should have probably backed off and thrown a fireball or right, whatever the case may be. It's about mental bandwidth. So we have low mental bandwidth games and we'll have high mental bandwidth games. And these things they're all connected. This is, dude, we need more intersectional fighting game analysis. Like, so much of our fighting game analysis looks at things in a vacuum. We look at one thing and say, what does that mean? What does simple inputs mean? And it's like, no, what does creating a more approachable space mean for the design of the game, and how does that impact people who want the more complex stuff? That's a way more interesting question, and we need to start thinking about things on that term. Yeah, and so there you go, Punk. So it's mental stack it's the idea of you being able to keep track of everything in the game. And so you'll have a short mental stack or low mental bandwidth early on as you don't know much. But as you internalize a lot of this knowledge, it becomes easier and easier to process the inputs that are coming in. So like you're getting fed data when you're playing a game, right? And your mental bandwidth isn't able to process all the data that is being fed to you. But as your mental bandwidth improves as you play the game more and become more familiar with it, then all that data coming in, you're able to process it, and you're able to consider the high, the low, the right, the left, the throw, the strike, all those things and how they interact. Yes, Foxy Boxy Games. Any solution can't be a silver bullet, is what they say. And they have a little bit of a concern of Street Fighter going in this direction, right? Trying to find a silver bullet to the approachability issue. But it's good that we give the developers a chance to express their intent. So yeah, take the shot, see how it works. But yes, I think it might be a very narrow view of the approachability issue, and having a broad solution to a narrow problem can lead to problems for everyone on the spectrum. Yes, hypergraph. And so, yeah, as you practice more in a game and you become more familiar, it'll lower the mental stack requirements or increase your mental bandwidth. So that's what we got here, folks. And I honestly think I'm going to start with Robo-O here. And in part because Foxy's in the chat, and in part because the more I thought about this and the more I looked at the indie games we have available to us, the more I'm like, Robo-O really is kind of a sweet spot where it's a 2-button fighter, but it has a third button that is A and B together, so it's a macro, which acts as throw and offers you EX moves. It's a Street Fighter style game, 2D fighter, but you have meter management with a super bar that you can use for supers, as well as EXs, as well as dash cancels. You have a very intricate juggle system, which is relatively limited. You have limited amounts of juggles, unless you use some of the other mechanics. And so if you're looking at Robo-O on the spectrum of like input complexity, then you're like, look, it's a 2-button fighter. 2-button fighters, maybe they should be over here, right? But hey, 2-button fighters with EX moves and throws and dash cancels, and yeah, like it doesn't get into high complexity. You don't have pretzel motions. You don't have, a ton of extended one-frame links. There's like, its combos are relatively short and sweet, and the juggle system makes sense, so it's not, but like, it's there. And then you think of the mental bandwidth required, where it's a Street Fighter style game, so you have to worry about the high, low, strike. I mean, there's like, it's all of your traditional fighting game stuff, but it's a bit of a slower pace game. So if it was faster paced, maybe it would be more mental bandwidth. If there was more systems to consider, maybe it will be higher. But it's not like there are no meter management. It's not like there are no special systems. The cast is relatively sizable for a game of its style. So yeah, like I like Robo-O. Like maybe I would put it like just down here, right? Where there are some games that are more, yeah, but like I think this is a great, like Robo is a great starting point, right? That, as Punk says, look, Robo-O is not Marvel vs. Capcom, but it sure as heck isn't Footsies or One Strike. Hello, Footsies. Input complexity on Footsies is down in the low end of things, right? Footsies does not have much in the way of input complexity, but it can be a pretty high mental bandwidth game at times, right? Like, there's a lot going on, but it's not super systems heavy. There are very, very limited systems. There's a very, very limited button space. So you have less to think about. but it's all the more meaningful because of it. And so that's one of the benefits you get. Yeah, Robo-O definitely does have some tighter links and stuff like that, but I think in the grand scheme of things, that's not necessarily where the complexity is coming from. But I see what you're saying, right? And this is what I want. I want everyone to come into these charts and to make their own. More than anything, these charts reveal a whole heck of a lot about you as a person and a player. So I want to see everyone build their own charts and come out with it. So let's go the couple button fighters, right? We got Bearsis, which is similar in input complexity, right? But maybe higher on the mental bandwidth required. Actually, I'd probably put footsies a little bit higher, right? Okay. We got One Strike. Same thing, low input complexity. But what's the mental bandwidth requirement for this? I mean, I think you're not concerned about combos and stuff like that, so it's a little bit on the lower end, right? But I mean, we're down there, aren't we? Yeah, even if you simplify the game inputs, links are still going to exist. But it's like, I think it plays into the complexity requirement for the inputs. So that's why I'm taking it into consideration. And we got Tough Love Arena, which definitely a little bit higher. Like I said, I think Tough Love Arena moving over here into the higher mental bandwidth area. Oh, Pocket Rumble. Pocket Rumble also higher with, I would say, more complexity required, definitely. Oh, my good old friend Fantasy Strike. Honestly, now I might get some hate for this one. But I really believe Fantasy Strike is an extremely high mental bandwidth game in spite of its lenient input system and its slightly more limited play space. And that's in part because the speed of play. The pace with which you need to make decisions and the amount of decisions that you need to make feels so high compared to a lot of other games. Not only is it a best 4 out of 7 format, you can be playing in the 3v3 format, which will have you having 3 characters randomized so you can't counterpick, right, to get preferable matchups, which greatly increases the mental bandwidth requirements to play the game. Actually, as I'm saying this, it's going up and up more, right? Like, the game is extremely fast, and you have to do a lot of things which require lateral thinking in terms of how fighting games work, the way you have to tech throws, the way you have to give up defense or give up positioning to be defensive at all versus throws because you can't down back. There's a whole lot of stuff in Fantasy Strike that, despite its low input complexity, which still higher complexity than some, it is a surprisingly high mental bandwidth game. Oh, I see the Fantasy Strike fans in chat got my back. I appreciate that. Ultra Fight to Chianta. This is another one that I'm throwing it up there, man. I'm throwing Di Chianta all the way up there. This is something that Andrea, who actually, shout outs to Andrea for setting up the indie fighting game 2010s alignment chart. I really appreciate that. They mentioned it in my Discord that Di Chianta is, simple inputs, but holy heck, does it have high mental bandwidth requirement in terms of the pace of play and the things that can happen and the character selection possibilities, all that good stuff. Yeah, Chianta is chaos incarnate. Exactly. Now, motion sickness, I'm throwing up over here. And this, I have not actually had the pleasure of playing a lot of any motion sickness as it stands. But conceptually, it can be the highest input complexity possible that I have ever seen in a fighting game. And the mental bandwidth requirements that come from that, I think, push it way up, even if the game itself can be even if the game itself could be simple, what you're forced to process with everything else can, increase the mental load required, right? Uchu Mega Fight, we got another 2-button fighter that I think resides on the complexity chart. I think it's actually just below, right? I would say it's less complex in terms of input requirements and all that stuff than Robo-O, and I feel like I have to deal with less of a mental stress when actually playing Uchu Mega Fight. So I'm gonna drop it down there. Mib saying honestly, you'd put the mental bandwidth in the middle for motion sickness, so closer to down there. All right, that's fair. I will take Mib's advice on this one 100%. And definitely, folks, let me know. Yo, if you got some insights into some of these games, you let me know. Okay, Dual Souls. My friends. Top right corner. Top right corner is Dual Souls. I don't know if y'all have played this. Oh, man. It is once again one of the most system-rich games I have ever played. There's a lot going on visually on screen. Oh, God. The inputs can be, it's like a Guilty Gear layout, but it has like way more fucking systems, man. Like it's legitimately, I think this is the most complex input-wise and the highest bandwidth fighting game that I have ever played. The combo system and the input required to do them, it can be wild as it is, and then all the system mechanics on top of that is just, it's like you can feel 20 years of game design go into that, where it's like, like the Souls series is a legacy series. The first game came out on the Game Boy Advance in the early 2000s. They have been iterating and layering systems on top of this since then, and you can feel it. It just permeates the game. All right, Heatwave is definitely input complexity. I think it starts going up here and starts getting into the high mental bandwidth stuff. You've got a lot going on. It's a fast pace of play. There's a lot of wild stuff. There's a lot of characters. Okay, I keep saying it. As I keep saying things, I keep pushing it up on the mental bandwidth. There's a lot of characters. They all have 3 modes. There's a tag mode that's available that can interact with the single player mode and how you consider those things. Oh my lord. So despite the fact that Heatwave actually does a really good job doing it's a 4-button ABCD Air Dasher style fighting game. It's got relatively lenient inputs, relatively lenient input buffer. There were no DP motions in the game until relatively recently, I think. So despite all that, the way you can select grooves basically, or styles, and the pace of play and the styles of mix-ups really put it further into the complexity, definitely bandwidth complexity issue. Yeah, lots of nuance going on in Heatwave. You can think, oh, I can just Magic Series ABC Special Super, and you can, and you'll get damage out of it. But the game is so much more than that. Yeah, Punk saying there's so much to Heatwave that it honestly scared my gorilla brain off a bit. Yeah, all right, that's fair. Like, you start playing it and you start realizing what's going on, and you're like, oh, holy heck, okay, I underestimated this. Oh, Murfight. Oh, good old Murfight. I am a fan of Murfight. I'd say it does similar things in terms of leniency, and probably I would place it just here under Heatwave. I'd say Heatwave has a faster pace of play, and requires a little bit more from your bandwidth, mental bandwidth. But Heatwave is a close second, and I think the way its lenient input system works actually probably pushes it a little bit closer to the center there. Oh my, okay, the Black Heart. It's got some input complexity to it. It's got some tight combos, that is for frickin' sure. But it's got a fairly amenable system, like a Magic Series system. I'm gonna put 2 strikes just over here, right? Like up it a little and move it down. So just inching it up, head to head. Low input complexity. If you want it to connect, it'll probably connect. Lots of stuff going on in that game. So yeah, definitely I'm gonna put it here in the Tough Love Arena Bearsis camp. Oh, and I'm probably gonna get some heat for this, and I'm gonna have to like reassess my fighting game opinions once I complete this chart. Arcus Chroma. Another one. Inputs. Actually, once again, sure, there's no jumping, but you have moves that make you aerial, and you have teleport moves for Zyva. Oh man, the way movement works in this game actually requires a lot out of you. And there are some pretty impressive combos. Yeah, Arcus Chroma's definitely got a lot to it. Mega Knockdown. This is one that is all the way at the left-hand side for low input complexity. If y'all don't know Mega Knockdown, it is a turn-based fighting game. Inputs are not your enemy here. You can have a list of the inputs required, and you can slowly and casually take as much time as you want on your turn and just go poke. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. Inputs are not the problem. Mental bandwidth, on the other hand, is a problem. The fact that it is actually a turn-based fighting game, and the way you have to like consider you're playing it like chess. You're playing it like Civilization, where you're like, oh man, okay, and I can't save scum in a fighting game, so I just gotta like, what am I gonna do? How do I set this up to know that in 3 turns he'll do that, so when my move comes out, you're forced to go down the rabbit hole of all of the possibilities of all of like the branching paths of decisions, because you're sitting there on your turn and you have all the time in the world to think about it. Yeah, it is hilarious. Like, I tried it out a year ago. I have to go back to it to see some of the changes, because they've made some really cool changes to the game. So I'm definitely going to have to check that out a little deeper. But turn-based, like legitimately, the only turn-based fighting game I can think of. I've just noticed that we have a quadrant that is completely empty here. Oh, Schwarzenblitz. Where are we putting this? I don't know. Schwarzenblitz seems about here on my mental bandwidth requirements, right? Maybe. I mean, I'm not a 3D fighter player, so I'd put it up here if I'm being honest with myself. But like, we could put it there, and it's got a bit of complexity for it, right? I could put it there. I'm gonna put Schwarzenblitz there. Exploding Judo Federation, right? Probably similar on the, I would say there's less of it. I mean, like, mental bandwidth requirements for Exploding Judo Federation I felt were much lower. And like the probably the input as well. But yeah, I'm gonna put it there. Fight of Animals, that's right. My experience with Fight of Animals was also relatively low mental bandwidth, but I was working harder. I was working harder to do the combos that I was grinding out. That's for sure. Right? Punch Planet, I would probably say the same thing. I'd say Punch Planet probably around there. What is that? Oh, shoot. Y'all, what is this game? I don't even know. A diamond with some hands around it? This is my problem. I made the mistake. I dropped it in there. Now I can't get it out. That's right. Okay. You're right. Its existence is confusing me. So it's the highest mental bandwidth game possible. And apparently there's no input complexity, because I can't play a game that I don't know exists. I think that's where it belongs. Oh, y'all got my backs. So I guess, yeah, Fight of Gods, my experience with that is similar too. Right? Where I put it down here. It's the Fight of category, apparently. And then these I have not played. I haven't played Beatdown Dungeon. I haven't played Hyperfight. I haven't played Duels of Fortune. Actually, I have played a bit of Beatdown Dungeon, Demon Day. Put Fight of Gods above Fight of Animals. All right. Duels of Fortune, top, mid, left. So relatively low input. Okay, so maybe I put it right under. I'll put it here. And I feel Hyperfight should probably be, from what I've heard of it, should probably be around there as well, right? Maybe between Merfight and Duels of Fortune. Slightly above Bear Sis, in your opinion. Interesting. So closer to there. Yo, this is really interesting. Like, I mean, I think as a rule, okay, just looking at this, right? We have very few games that I consider low mental bandwidth. Now, this is something that maybe I'm a big dum-dum, right? Maybe I'm just a big dum-dum, and so everything is complex for me, and really, I should be dropping everything that, like, my lowest should be the lowest, and then, like, shift everything down, and is that closer to reality? I don't know. I know, yeah, I need to find what is low input complexity, what is the lowest input complexity, lowest mental bandwidth game that you can think of. Because my input complexity spectrum does not just think of button inputs, but is thinking of, like I said, input buffer. It's thinking of button real estate. It's thinking of, speed of combo requirements. It's thinking of tightness of links. It's taking all of those things into consideration. That I'm not sure you can actually get a game that is that complex in terms of inputs and be a low mental bandwidth game. Like, I think realistically, like a Fight of the Animals, like maybe you could get here with a game, right? Yeah, okay, so footsies for you is the easiest to play. And I think that's a fair thing where you're looking at some of these games, especially in these clustered areas, right? One strike, two strike, footsies, uchu, pocket rumble. Depending on who you are, those things are gonna they're gonna shift. They're gonna be like in different positions depending on what your strengths are as a player or whatever the case may be. This is gonna be my starting point. So, like I said, I've done the indie game stuff. I've got some more, man. Like I want to put 5-Force Fighters on here. 5-Force Fighters, probably up here above Arcus Chroma. What is the concern that people have about dumbing down our fighting games, right? It's that all of our games are going to end up down around here, right? It's going to be low mental bandwidth, which is a necessity for low complexity. I think the reality of our fighting games is that they are even the simplest ones are far more complex than we're giving them credit for. We got to look at this and say, honestly, maybe they're not. Like maybe it's only going to be a meme game down in this area, or it's only going to be a meme game down in this area. But that like above this threshold of like they're dumb and you don't have to think. I mean, look at how fucking widespread this is. Sure, there's a lot, especially in the indie space. I think this is indicative of the modern indie space, where you get a lot of stuff that clusters towards the low input complexity. But we have a nice little spread up in this top right corner here, right? If you're into anime fighters or KOF or Street Fighter style fighters, or you want some Mugen game. Yeah, you want some sci-fi Street Fighter with some dope, Street Fighter 4 with dope links. You want 3D games. You want Guilty Gear style complexity. You've got a bit of everything in there, right? You want Street Fighter, or you want anime, or you want turn-based or anime, or right, like Guilty Gear style. You can get a bunch of variety in here. And even down here, Pocket Rumble has a lot of similarities to the SNK style games. Robo-O is a Street Fighter style game. Uchu Mega Fight, closer to Street Fighter, but also like a weird wonky in between where it, like, I don't know, man. I don't even know what to compare Uchu Mega Fight to. And then you got your one button games, right? Or your one hit kill games down here. Oh, yes. An interesting point, Foxy, that there was an upward shift as people discovered more about the games and discovered it more deeply. And I think that it moved up after a long time. And yeah, Robo-O started out as a game that didn't have throws. It didn't have a dash cancel mechanic. It didn't have all these things. And like, maybe Robo-O initially was closer to down here, right? But as we have discovered more about the game and the game has evolved and it has changed, it has moved closer to here. And yes, perhaps Y20, that Robo-O is actually the most complex. Yes, Robo-O and Blackheart are your ideal fighting games because they provide the perfect balance of complexity, both in inputs, mechanically speaking, and mentally speaking. Yeah, the evolution, and that's it. None of these things are static. That is the other thing worth remembering, right? None of this is static because games change, games evolve. Has there ever been a game that was lowered in complexity as time went on? That's an interesting question. I can't think of it off the top of my head. No, I can't think of any really off the top of my head that would have had like a shift in the design or a patch that actually reduced it. What would be a circumstance that would lessen complexity? I could see something like, okay, so Smash Brothers. If there was a patch to Smash Brothers to change wave dashing, you could, in theory, patch complexity out of Smash Bros. By changing how wave dashing and how movement works because of it. I would say that's probably the easiest go-to example of what is a major thing that could be changed that would fundamentally change the mental bandwidth requirements. And I think movement in Smash is 100% at the top of that list. Soul Calibur 6 decreased partly their mental stack requirement by making guard impact simply pressing 6 and guard instead of having the high-low guard impact. There you go. Right? A change that reduced the mental bandwidth requirements of a game and could possibly push it further down on this alignment chart. Like I said, I think charts like this reveal a lot about the people who make them, because this will be a really interesting cross-section of like, what does the fighting game community think about complex games? Well, let's do some comparison, folks. Ah, yes, Andrea, moving from universal parry to high-low parry. But I think this is really cool. Like, I'm glad I did this actually, because yeah, I think just talking about these games, like, I would not have necessarily said in general conversation that Fantasy Strike and Heat Wave, like Fantasy Strike and Heat Wave, I would not necessarily say they are they would be the same mental bandwidth requirement. But if I think about what I'm required to do in each of those games, 100%. I think this chart needs to be just like larger, just so I can push Dual Souls up even further. Dual Souls should be up and around here somewhere. Absolutely. Like, I would say, I think I have to think about more things, and I'm concerned about more things in the Black Heart than I am in Robo O. The inputs are a little less difficult. Like, especially when you start looking at these things in comparison to each other, you start seeing the connections between them and what makes them complex and what makes them interesting and what makes them difficult to play. All right. So there we have it. We got a bit of an alignment chart. And so now the big question is, what are we playing? What on this alignment chart, first of all, can we play? And then will we play?